Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey, and we're here for another conversation episode. This time, Lauren Rowney stepped in to chat with Alexa Cunningham, marketing manager for Shimano Road. Lauren and I met Alexa this summer at the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift, and were immediately drawn to her enthusiasm when it comes to women's road cycling. So when Lauren got a chance to sit down with her during the off season, we jumped at that opportunity. I'm super excited that we could get Alexa on the podcast, and Lauren is probably one of the best conversationalists you'll ever meet. So really looking forward to this episode. Thanks everyone so much for listening. Here we go.
Hello. Welcome to the Wheel Talk podcast. I'm your guest host for the day, coming to you live from the Shimano Experience Center. And I'm really excited today to introduce you to our guest, Alexa Cunningham, one of the trailblazing women in the cycling industry space. Alexa is head of road marketing for Shimano and is based out of the head office here in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And I had the pleasure of meeting Alexa at the Paris-Roubaix 2023 VIP Zwift box. Thank you very much, Kate Verino, for that connection. So welcome to the podcast, Alexa. Would you like to tell our listeners, if they don't know who you are, a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, so as you can hear by my accent, I'm South African. I was born in South Africa and moved over to the Netherlands roughly, I think it's 5 or 6 years ago. And I've been with Shimano for 5 years as marketing responsible for road category for the last 2 years. I fell into cycling purely by chance, but I think we'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a little bit of time to come. But yeah, living in the Netherlands, living south of Eindhoven, got a big dog named Buddy. He's a cross between a Saint Bernard and a Bernese mountain dog. And married a Dutchman, and here we are.
It's funny because today I only just realized that our timeline in terms of either marrying a Dutchman or a Belgian is quite similar, that we sort of arrived officially in Europe in 2019, just before COVID. Obviously, I've come out of the professional cycling ranks, but you've been in the industry a really long time. And where we first met was, yes, at this opportunity at the Paris-Roubaix 2023 in the VIP box. Thank you, Kate, again. And I was kind of just drawn to your energy, and we obviously made that introduction and figured out who we were. And then it got me thinking, like looking around the room there in terms of who was present during that event. Like it was a big moment for women in cycling. It was the second ever Paris-Roubaix. We had a lot of brands there, but my immediate thought was Alexa is this bundle of energy, but she's surrounded by men. And even though this was the women's event the day before, the overwhelming majority of people in that VIP box was still largely.
It was a fun event, by the way, and it's so curious. I'm so blown away by how this event has changed since then. I think if we look at when we met each other, I was maybe one of the fewer women that were there. Surrounded by some amazing men who I work with that are my biggest guardian angels, but also biggest support network and crew. But there were a lot of women that came together, and we all kind of got to meet each other and got chatting. And I think what we really realized is that there's so many things that we need to connect on professionally, but also ride with, chat about in terms of industry related challenges that we may or may not have, but also have like a peer kind of group that needed to get going. And I think if I look at last year and I look at this year, the amount of women that were in that sort of, that hospitality area was incredible this year. And I think that the friendships have certainly grown over the last year in terms of how we reach out to each other as a resource. And I also look at since Paris-Roubaix, avec Zwift from last year till now, what's happened in the industry in terms of some programs that have been kicked off, in terms of what happened at, women meeting and getting together at the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. It's like it sort of knocked off a chain of events, right? But a lot of those women to date, I mean, they're like my sisters. They're my go-to girls, and I'm super, super grateful for it. But it's certainly, it's been a two-year process. But like I said, I was still maybe a bit wet behind the ears when I started in this role. And Paris-Roubaix Femmes avec Zwift was my first big event that I went to. And of course, being South African, I had a little bit of, almost like imposter syndrome. It was a big event for me, of course, and the activation that we were doing there. But one of the greatest things and gifts that I think that came out of that event was the chain reaction that happened after that in terms of, how we got to where we are today, with being connected with so many incredible women.
And I think these events, I wanted to talk about this a little bit later, but now seems a good time that we're on it. These events, and Abby actually wrote a nice article in the summer about this where she interviewed you, have become like a meeting point for women within the industry, all types of women, not just for the professional athletes, because of course there's been this amazing rise within women's professional cycling, but it transcends that. And now we're seeing within the industry since, the Uplift mentoring program, thanks to Rachel Burnside and Shift Active Media has come about. And that's been one of the catalysts, I think, in connecting women within the industry, and particularly women in leadership roles. And, I've enjoyed the 2 times I've been to Paris-Roubaix connecting with different women there, but it was really, truly at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift this summer that I got to meet these women in these high positions. And I mean, as a woman yourself in a high position in a company like Shimano, it's a really big deal.
Well, thanks. Abby was, thanks, Abby. That was a lovely story that you wrote, a lovely interview as well. But it's exactly what you say. I think back to last year, and I definitely feel that the discussions already then were around, we need peer-to-peer resources. We need soundboards. We need, we need more friends and allies in the industry. And one of the beautiful things I love about this industry is that I don't see any women competing with each other. All of them are, all the ones that I've come across are there to uplift each other. And that's why, it's such a good segue to exactly what you said about Uplift. Uplift was created, and it was created out of the need for women to be pulling women into the industry. And it's something that we see certainly a big shortage of. I mean, it's no secret. We do need to get more women working in the cycling industry, but also more women feeling supported and women staying in the cycling industry. I think that was the biggest challenge as well, is getting women, to remain working in the industry and feeling supported, and also making it as enticing as possible to women who are perhaps passionate about cycling or thinking of a career in cycling, to show them that it is not all masculine. It's not super crazy technical, or if it is technical, if you need to learn something, that you can learn it. There are companies that support training and have training academies working in the cycling industry. But I certainly feel that if I look at the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift this year, it's like a party with all your girlfriends. It really was. It was every time we walk around the corner, I saw yourself and Abby. I mean, there you girls having your nails done. It was a celebration for the women within our company as well, who all got together and came down to Valkenburg to come and support the event. So we're super grateful for that. But also looking at how brands like Liv have really, really embraced the sponsorship of the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift. I mean, they had a couple of hundred of their female dealers and consumers that they invited out to Valkenburg on that day. It was like a sea of purple. It was amazing. But I think it really all started off with Kate and the team at Zwift. So, and I know, huge props for them, that they were the first to step into the space, really the first to pioneer having a strategy which is focused and centered around women, for women, supporting women in cycling, but also looking at how they can create opportunities for women working in the cycling industry, supporting the teams that they sponsor. So I think for them and what they've done is absolutely hands down brand plus, from one woman working in the industry to another. And then you also started seeing it was almost like a chain reaction, or there was a bit of a knock-on effect that a lot more brands started stepping up and getting involved in how can we get on this train that we see is really traveling at full speed ahead. And I see that some brands have really jumped into that. I mean, one of those brands I can speak of based on personal experience is also Canyon. I look at how Canyon involved in not only the teams that they sponsor, but also how they're driving women's strategy within the company itself. A couple of weeks ago, I was invited by Canyon on a weekend away with, it was like 20 women from around the industry, from around the world, getting together to look at how Canyon can start to really craft and shape women's cycling and women in the business of cycling. And it was really like a summit of let's get more girls on bikes, let's get more women working in the industry. And it was so cool to see that brands are really now starting to pick it up and run with it. And I'm super proud to be a part of that momentum as well. So all started with Zwift. Their willingness to get involved, beautiful events, getting a bunch of girls together. And once you get a bunch of women in a room together, we don't sit down, especially the women that I've met. We don't sit on our hands. We just start running with it. And it's great when we have organizations and companies that really support us to be able to do that.
And I think these sort of meetings are really important, what you've just touched on, collaboration. Because if we want to see things moving forwards, we need to bring all these women together in the same room. We need men in the room too, to also listen and hear what is happening in the space, what needs to happen in the space. Offline, we were just having some lunch, we were talking about some numbers and how you were saying that participation figures or sales seems to hover around that 18 to 20% mark. Is this something that you discuss a lot when you're meeting with your team?
Yeah, I think it's a number that we've spoken about, and it's the same number that's been hovering around for give or take the last 5 years that I've been in this role within Europe. And I think one of the things I said to you at lunchtime was, we tend to focus a lot on that 20%. Right? It's the women that are in cycling. However, I think that one of the key focuses as part of a women's strategy is to look at that 30%. So where are they? What are the barriers to entry in terms of them getting on a bike or them working in the cycling industry? Once you've identified those, it will help you to be able to craft a strategy of how to go and get those women either on bikes, feeling a part of a community, or working within the cycling industry. And I think the biggest thing is, maybe it's the word that I used just now, was the word community. One of my experiences is that women are very community driven. I mean, you just look at how you put all of us in a room together and all of a sudden things starts running at 100 miles an hour. And that's what I'm seeing with a lot of the brands that are crafting successful women's strategy, is around creating community. And having said that, I think one of the biggest things that I must also point out is that a lot of my allies are male. I look at when we did a panel discussion at Eurobike on the Shimano stand, and we had Nikki Hawes from White Bikes was there. She's the CEO. We had Liv, Cassandra Spring was there as well, and we had Rachel. And one of the topics that came up was to talk about allies, male allies in the industry. And I must be honest that I've been very, very fortunate in the sense that I've got an amazing group of allies around me. I've had our PR and comms manager who is always pushing me at the forefront to and supporting me in various initiatives. I've got our sustainability manager as well, who's also pushing me. I've got, my colleague who's the marketing manager responsible for gravel and for mountain bike, who are they're like brothers. So I've been very, very fortunate. Having said that, I haven't sat and gone, oh, woe is me, I'm the only woman working in this company. Absolutely not. What I've instead decided to focus my energy on is, hey, how can I get more women to experience this? Because it's not necessarily that all women's experience is going to be the same. And I work with a couple of mentees as well through the Uplift program, where I've heard some pretty scary situations in the sense of just lots of masculinity that they've had to deal with. And And one of the things I've always said to them is you need to be strategic in how you do things and how you approach things. And I think that was one of the biggest learnings that I took as well is lean into these amazing men that I've got around me, look up to and pull up women that you are surrounded with. At the end of the day, it's not a competition. We're all passionate about the same thing. We're all passionate about cycling. We're all passionate about the cycling industry. So I think that's really formed the basis of where I am today and how I work with people around me and try to support people around me as well.
I think the key here is fostering culture within cycling teams, within companies, within national federations. If there isn't a good culture, or if a company recognizes that the culture is currently toxic because, it has been predominantly a male-filled space. That's just the history of the sport. But I think that's still a large part of the problem. What you just said with the mentees, like some of the maybe perhaps negative experiences they've had in perhaps some cycling brands. Like as someone working in a Japanese-owned company, living in Europe now as a South African woman, and you're in a head of a department, was it the culture of Shimano that drew you there, or what was it? Like, I know that you spoke offline about that there were a lot of men that you felt supported you, so you felt confident going for that role. But as mentioned before, the technicality of working for a componentry company, I know myself that would terrify me. Even if I ticked the boxes of being able to sell iced and Eskimo, as you put it, that fear around going into the absolute unknown, but being surrounded by, mostly men, which can be intimidating and has been highlighted by multiple studies and qualitative research by, for example, the FIAS project in the UK, that a huge barrier for women is that being able to walk into that room or that interview where, you've been interviewed by a group of men and feeling underqualified, inexperienced, and just not feeling like you're in that sort of safe environment, even if perhaps the culture of the company seems enticing.
I think, one of the things is the way I was raised was you will have limitations and you will have barriers to entry and you will have challenges in your life. You are responsible for how you work and push through those. And for sure, when I applied for this role that I'm in now, I must be very transparent with you in the sense that I wasn't going to apply for it. I thought there's no chance on this planet that I'm gonna get that role. There's no way. It's like, of course, they surely will pick a guy because it's more technical and it's marketing responsible for the road category. It's a heritage part of a Japanese company and no way. It's like I shouldn't do this. And then I thought, you know what have I got to lose? Throw my hat in the ring. And I think I've got an amazing relationship with the other marketing managers in the other categories. And I've worked with them through, other projects that I was involved in as well beforehand. What have I got to lose? And if I don't throw my hat in the ring and I don't get the job, like what? Then I'm going to always go, what if? Or I'm going to have these areas of resentment. I think that it took me chatting to one or two, again, male colleagues saying, look, do you think I have a fighting chance? And there again, it's that imposter syndrome, that darn imposter syndrome. And they said, you know what, Lex, go for it. Go for it. We've got your back. We know that whatever you do, you're going to put your mind to it. And whatever you don't know, you're going to ask. And whatever you're unsure about, you're going to show that you're vulnerable. And I think that's maybe a key point within any culture, within particularly the cycling industry. One of the problems, and this is a problem that I have seen and identified, is that women tend to steer away from showing themselves as being vulnerable. And they put on this bravado or a mask, and they think because that is what the industry needs. No, that's not what the industry needs. The industry, in terms of cycling, it needs vulnerability. It needs leaders. It needs women who are there to support, uplift, embrace, be compassionate, be vulnerable. And those are the things that I want to be. And I think I had a really, really great role model who, her video has come out this week. I think we know who we're talking about here, is Bonnie too. I always looked up to Bonnie too. I mean, I have a Liv bike at home. I'm a big fan of the brand. But I looked up to her and the way that she's really pioneered. She's pioneered cycling for women and the bike industry for women. And one of the things that she said at the beginning of the interview was like, she's a troublemaker. Well, okay, I'm not a troublemaker, but I certainly am always going to ask questions, and I'm always going to challenge things, and I'm always going to back myself. And I think that that's something that if you have some of those skills, you can and should sharpen them. And if you want to work in the cycling industry, okay, yeah, sure, you've got to have relatively thick skin, but you've also got to really believe in yourself, and you've got to back yourself, and you've got to know that, okay, maybe you're not the most technically advanced person, but you know what? You're going to study. You're going to work hard at it. You're going to make sure that you learn as much as possible. And I'm not scared of that. I think that there's a lot of women out there who I see that in too, and most of the time, yeah, we need to hold a mirror up to ourselves and be like, yeah, I am strong, I am capable, I am bold, I am brave, and I'm not stupid. I'm prepared to put in the work. So if you want to reap the rewards, you have to put in the hours, and that's probably the best thing that I would say to that.
So on that, what is Shimano's current strategy with improving inclusivity and diversity within the company? And we hear those words a lot now within this industry, in particular because there is an issue and it's been identified. And I think there are a lot of companies who are genuinely trying to tackle it. But again, speaking about the barriers with women, the technical side of things, how is, in your recruitment strategy, how is Shimano tackling that?
We're so lucky. We've got, so Crystal started with us, I think she started end of last year as our COO. And she is a rock star. She is an absolute firecracker. And one of the things which is quite close to Crystal's heart is basically driving diversity and inclusivity. And we have an amazing HR team who have also created what we call the Diversity and Inclusivity Ambassador Program. And within that program, we focus on basically different programs within Shimano to tackle things like, okay, the recruitment side of things, getting more women working at Shimano. What are the first things that we should probably focus on? One of those was, how are we scripting our vacancies that we're sharing? And we put that under a bit of a sort of microscope as well, in that a lot of the stuff that we had been scripting in terms of the vacancies that would go out on LinkedIn they sounded really technical, and they sounded like I would be too scared to apply for that because it sounded like I needed to be like a freaking mechanic. And then the images that we were using as well when we would post roles would be mostly male. And I was like, no. We need to make sure that we're showing men and women. For us, it's never, we will never put out, we're looking for a guy, or we're looking for, that's just illegal. That's just not what we're not out for that. At the end of the day, it's about, making sure that we're appointing the best person for the role, but being super mindful and holding under a magnifying glass the way and the copy that we use to try and attract people to certain roles is super, super important. Also looking at different benefits that we have within the company to support people and women who are, potentially looking at starting a family. I think that's super, super important. So there's the HR related side of things. There's also different programs that we have. So having certain special days within the company where we get everybody together, and that's on the diversity side of things, to sort of, especially the expats, getting people to work more with each other, to create social networks outside of work as well, because I think that's super important. One of the things I experienced was coming from South Africa. I didn't know a single soul in Eindhoven. And it can be quite lonely in the sense of Eindhoven. Okay, it's filled with expats. It's the home of Philips. We're at the high-tech campus. It is so it's very expat driven, but people don't really communicate with each other in the sense of like, then not everyone's just there to work. And one of the things that we're trying to change there is in the culture of getting people to actually talk. to each other. And obviously that situation that we had, which sounds like COVID, didn't make it any easier for myself, but also for a lot of people. And what we started doing was identifying like what are the barriers that are in the way of getting people to talk to each other and communicate and lean into each other and have support networks. So creating a bit more of a closer culture. And then, of course, there's other areas in looking at the different profiles of jobs and when roles become, available, how can we make sure that those are attractive to as many people as possible, whether it's in the industry, so cycling industry, or looking outside of the industry. And then also looking at how other brands are doing things. And if you're looking at like running, you look at how ASICS are basically running their vacancy programs or HR programs. So really looking at how other businesses are leaning into embracing diversity and inclusivity. And like I said, with the D&I program that we have, it's amazing because there's guys, there's girls, there's people from all around the world that are involved in that program as well. And then what we do is we sit down and basically look at what are the fundamental key focus areas that we'd like to look at from internal Shimano Europe. And then we give that to Crystal, and Crystal runs off with it at 100 miles an hour. And it's something that we really feel pretty safe and confident in, that she takes to Exco and obviously tries to get various requests met for the rest of the employees. So we feel pretty supported. Look, we're not there yet. Of course, we've got a long way to go. But the fact that we're actively internally embracing it and working on it and acknowledging it and really actively trying to get more women working at Shimano is the first step. The other thing is, if we look at our sponsorships, we look at all the teams that we sponsor. We look at the ambassadors that we work with. For me, it's no compromise when it comes to ambassadors. It's 50-50. Like whether we're making sure that we're equally supporting, and that obviously when it comes to how we pay our ambassadors, same thing, equal pay. When it comes to teams, you'll see now that if there's any sponsors that are, just supporting the men's team and not supporting the women's team, it's, you're living in the dark ages if that's how you're approaching your marketing strategy or your sponsorship strategy. So in that sense, we're also really focusing on ensuring that we look after both women and men's cycling as well.
I'm so happy you brought that up, because that was actually going to lead into my next point or statement and then line of questioning was, as the listeners know, I used to race professionally about 8 years ago or so, and it was a very different environment back then in terms of everything. But obviously, we couldn't watch women cycling. Not much. You could see women racing the World Championships, short highlights from the Ronda and such, but it was very hard to have eyes on the sport at that point. And within the industry, I'm not sure how much we were talking about participation. I don't know how much it's grown in terms of women in leadership roles in the last 8 to 10 years, but definitely as someone who's head of marketing, and you talk about budget and how you want to split it 50-50. I know during my time that very much wasn't a thing. It was very, very obvious that brands were, if there was a team that had a women's team, it was always the afterthought. And I really genuinely feel that there are a lot of teams like Trek, like AG Insurance, Sudal. I feel that the sponsors are really now getting behind the women, and it's not just tokenism now. It's genuine. And I wondered, is it because we have more women behind the scenes pushing the women's agenda? Like we've spoken about Kate Veronneau from Zwift. Zwift is a fantastic company, but I'm sure if it hadn't been for Kate, the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift would not be the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. They convinced the ASO that they needed to do this, and now the ASO love it. Yeah. They've signed on for another few years. I mean, it's there, but I really feel that without women like you, without women like Kate, this simply wouldn't have happened, like without women like Cassandra.
I mean, thanks. I think it's also the credit goes to... it's no longer acceptable. It's, society is waking up. Businesses are waking up that it's just no longer okay. It's no longer acceptable to to be, oh, I'm only going to sponsor this men's team. I'm not going to sponsor the women's team. Like that's just no longer okay. And I think back in the days it was, or 8 years ago, 5 years ago, it was, it was still okay. But now if you're a brand that wants to survive, and have loyal, consumers who are repeat purchasing your product, which at the end of the day, remember, that's what we do. That's the goal, is to make sure that we've got loyal consumers. You can't be tone deaf to this stuff, and you have to really step up. So I think the big props goes to the brands that are standing up and are stepping up and just saying, no, maybe that might be a cheaper option or the easier option, but it's about making that conscious decision that the line in the sand is here. And if we want to face scrutiny, if you want to bury ourselves as a brand, sorry to use that, but if you want to bury yourselves as a brand, then you fine, go for it. Only sponsor the men's team. See how that goes. But I also think back to something, and I was just thinking about it now when you were talking, was I remember I was event manager years ago, and I was event manager for quite a big mountain bike race, stage race. And as I moved into that role, one of the responsibilities of mine was sorting out the prize money. And of course, I looked at the prize money when I was given this role and this task, and it was crazy because the men's field went 10 deep and the women's field went like 5 deep. And if I looked at the age groupers, even there, the men's field was 5 deep in age group, and women's was 3. And I sat down and I looked at this and I was like, okay, but this is not okay. I don't feel okay with this. And of course, there were guys that were saying, yeah, but the women are finishing, 2 hours outside of the men. I was like, yeah, but that's not creating depth in the sport at all. Do we want more women coming into mountain biking? Like, do we want more women participating in our events? I can tell you the answer. We had at that stage, one of the biggest banks in South Africa was our sponsor. And I can tell you now that our sponsor managers from that bank were women. And if we wanted to get more money out of them at the end of the day, I need to make damn well sure that I'm keeping these sponsors happy. So I've seen it from both sides of the coin. I've seen it from not only the event organizer side of things, but I've also seen it from the sponsor side of things. And then I've also seen it from the athlete side of things, because I was also involved in athlete management at some stage. But I think the biggest thing is yes, it's a matter of all three. It's a matter of riders making sure that they're looking after partners, that they're really supporting each other, that they're not giving the industry a bad name. It's about the sponsors making sure that they are rising to the occasion as well. And it's about the events making sure that they are offering up equal prize money. Now, I know it's a bit of a sensitive subject, looking at some of the races that we have here in Europe. And it's still something that's not there yet. But I certainly believe at looking at, Demi as an example, and we spoke about this earlier, I look at Demi's Nike sponsorship and what that has done in terms of, not only shining a light, but also raising the bar on women's cycling and women's racing is huge. There's some people they're on the fence about it. They're like, oh, well, is it for the best interest? Is it good? Is it so good that she's getting so much? And I must be honest, I think it's great, because it's doing what I did years ago with the event side of things, where you equaling up the prize money. It's creating depth. And I think that is fundamentally what we want. We want depth, not only on the racing, we want depth within women working in the industry as well. And you're not going to do that again if you keep focusing on the 20%. It's the 30%. And that's ultimately what I did. So back to the story earlier was I took the prize money, I threw it all into a pot, basically took it all out and evened it up. And I can tell you now that in terms of participation of the event, we hit that 30% and then some in terms of participating. And we also created a separate start for the women. And one of the first races internationally to create a separate start for the women. We see that happening in gravel racing now. It's not saying that it's a one size fits all when it comes to women working in the cycling industry. It's just saying that we've got to unthink and rethink sometimes how we do things, and we've got to be open to that change as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think right now we're talking about what we were speaking about at lunch is the competitive realm of this industry right now. But that 30% we're talking about, if we want to reach that parity, that 50-50, is like you said, these sponsorships that individual athletes can have. It doesn't have to just be athletes, but I think in general, the whole industry of racing needs to look outside the box. Because this Nike deal, we'll use Demi as an example. She was in the Women's Health magazine in the Netherlands last year, right? When she signed this big deal, they did a beautiful spread with her. Now, a lot of women still pick up women's health, whether you're in the doctor's office or in a waiting room, or, you know, you see it passing by on social media or something. Demi was splashed all over it. And that is reaching that other audience, right? Exactly. So I wonder if these sort of collaborations, so brands like Shimano, if this is where the future lies to reach that 30%, is pairing up with these brands that go beyond cycling.
Oh my gosh, I know you're looking at me and I'm smiling from ear to ear because so for me, abso-freaking-lutely, the biggest thing is, you can keep casting your net in the same area. So what's the definition of insanity and stupidity? Is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. My job as a marketeer is to make sure that we're covering all the bases. And something that I said earlier was making sure that we are supporting cyclists. Okay, so one of the biggest things is we are so used to doing the same things, working with the same media partners, all focused, hyper-focused on race, because that was basically what we were used to. It's about unthinking, unlearning, and thinking out of the box. And I see it. I see it with other brands. What they're doing is starting to look at other ways in getting their brand across to new people into the sport. So one of my favorite product groups at Shimano is the Tiagra Claris group. And the reason for that is because those are really people that are new to cycling. They're super eager. They're really wanting to find out. They've got so many questions. They're all fun. But the biggest thing is where do you go and look for them? Well, absolutely, women's health. If I think that I'm going to get more women working in the cycling or more women supporting Shimano and buying Shimano products, if I keep advertising in one area, well, okay, I've got news for myself. But no, I've got to go and look at other areas. So things like Women's Day events, things like running clubs, park runs, for heaven's sake. I mean, we look at, especially, we're fortunate enough to not only, I'm probably just only focusing on the road category, because, that's one of my babies. But I think there's also the lifestyle category. And there's a lot of crossover there. There's a lot of women who are commuters. And a lot of women who are perhaps, and we see it more in the Netherlands, of course, because of the cycling culture. But I certainly think that going and looking for women and to participate, to get riding in other areas and not just the traditional areas is something that each business needs to have as part of their strategy for attracting that additional 30%. And one of the things I noted in the Bonnie interview this week was what the team at Liv really focused and hyper-focused their strategy on, was making cycling an inclusive space for anybody, for everybody. And that's something that they as a brand have done really, really, really well. And something that I feel that I would like to push and do better at, and feel like I need to keep doing better at it. It's like I said, it's just simply not acceptable anymore to not be doing something actively about it. I want to see more women on bikes because I know what it's like to live in an area where it's predominantly, male cyclists and the women are either ex-pro cyclists or, they're just simply not there. I'd love to have more women in my community. And I feel super inspired when, I was in Munich and I saw the women's cycling community there. You see the massive cycling community that Kate had when she was in LA as well. In UK, there's all these hubs that are really, really taking off. Back to the point. I think that certainly as a brand, you need to be focusing on promoting cycling outside of cycling as well. So what does your strategy look like, and how are you tapping into that is going to be key if you want to survive.
Well, I think a good point to almost wrap this up with is women's sport is having a moment right now. And we want to continue this momentum that we're seeing. Like, we can speak to what's happening in road cycling. I think disciplines like mountain biking are still a little bit behind. I'm curious to hear your opinion about that. But how do we continue this momentum as the media, as brands, as individuals? And this is men and women in the space. Like, how do you see it? Like, what is your ambition within your role right now?
I'm going to say something, and I feel like I should mic drop afterwards. It's not a moment, it's a movement. So thanks to the team at Strava and Zwift. You know what I'm talking about. There were these stickers that they were handing out at the Tour de France from Zwift, and I stole one and I've stuck it on my laptop, and absolutely, it is a movement. So back to how do I see myself being part of that wheel, is to just keep going. Now with this year, with Uplift, supporting everything that Uplift is doing, also looking at the various activities that we have planned as Shimano for next year with women, which I'm so excited about. Keep that momentum going. And then also looking at supporting, like Cycling Industries of Europe, women in cycling, really leaning and making sure that we sit up and we're available to these expert panels to provide insights and learnings that we've had. That is your responsibility as a leader. Fundamentally, it's our responsibility as a leader in the cycling industry. One of the things I didn't say earlier was that we also had we had Geraldine from SRAM. She also joined us when we were in Austria, and it was so interesting. Her and I went for a bike ride, and you would never see that. Shimano and SRAM cycling together in the same room. Or let alone, sitting at dinner and talking about how much we love women's cycling and how passionate we are about that. That's one of the things that we as women need to really embrace to keep this movement going, is each other, support each other, collaborate as businesses. At the end of the day, it's all for the best, and the best is to get more women riding, cycling, enjoying, supporting, and being a part of this movement.
Because we're a professional women's cycling podcast, as you know, and we talk about the women's calendar, and it's been great to have a chat today a bit outside of that usual topic of discussion that we have on the weekly podcast. For you, as someone who's been working with Shimano for 5 years and been looking in, what's your view of where the Women's World Tour is now, and just the women's professional cycling as a whole? And where do you think we're heading? Do you have a forecast in your mind of the direction we're heading in?
Well, I have wishes and aspirations for sure. I spent a little bit of time with Beth from Canyon SRAM when I was in Austria as well, and I had some good chats to her. We've also got the likes of Natasha Knaven as well from NextG. I've also had some good chats with her as well. I see the passion. I see the the support in terms of how they're garnering. I also see how professional women's cycling is. If I look at how their teams are structured, and you speak to the likes of Charisse Taylor, or you speak to any of the riders from yourself, you look at where it was 8 years ago or where it was 6 years ago to where it is now. I mean, it's like night and day. Is it moving as fast as we would like it to? No. Okay, let's just call out the elephant in the room. I think that, of course, there needs to be more investment in women's cycling. I think visibility is something that is so super important. Are we there? No, we're not. Can we get there? Abso-freaking-lutely. I think with all of us pulling together, And having these, I mean, there's some amazing women working in the Women's World Tour. Everyone from the Swaniers to the mechanics to the team owners, the sports directors, they are phenomenal, hardcore, and compassionate and just amazing women. So can we get there? Yeah, we can get there. Absolutely. But it's going to take a village, and we all need to kind of stick together. But one of the things that I did like to hear was that there are women working in the Women's World Tour who actually lean into each other quietly. They have little coffees, little lunches where they talk about how can we overcome this challenge from within the cycling industry. So they're putting their heads together. They're meeting. There's meetings happening between some of the owners of women's teams as well to see how can we really grow women's cycling? How can we get more eyeballs? So, hearing that and knowing that, I have full confidence that it's heading in the right direction. Just as long as we all support them as well.
I think the biggest issue I see from where I'm sitting is there is a lot of enthusiasm, excitement about the World Tour, and brands want to get involved. And, there's a lot of eyes and visibility now on the top tier. And we're going to have the introduction of the pro tier next year. And I think at the moment, maybe there's 8 to 10 teams who have applied for licenses, which means they clearly have the funding. We're not sure where that sits right now, but an issue that was, 5+ years ago was finding and securing that sponsorship. And this has always been an issue for cycling in general, that sponsors come and go. You have enthusiastic millionaires that throw money at something, get bored and leave. Thankfully, we've got some that have stayed on board for 10, 20 years. But I do wonder with these lower tier teams, which are really important for nurturing the talent that is coming up, where is the incentive for sponsors to want to put their money there instead of chasing the World Tour teams and, having their brand seen at the Tour de France Femme or on the Ronda or the Paris-Roubaix? And, I'm not a marketing mind right now, but I see that's where the division is going, is that money wants to come into the sport, but they want to be visible, right? Am I wrong in saying that? And will that cause an even bigger divide, that the budgets for these bigger teams will get bigger and bigger, but then the lower tier teams are falling away and then they don't have the budget, which means that riders aren't getting paid, which means that they have to work and then they can't train at the level that the women who are already in those well-supported teams are. And that's one of my big fears, and just wondering in terms of like securing sponsorship for these teams, how's it going to work?
Oh man, that's good question. That's I think this is something that I've also thought about quite a bit, and I totally see it in the sense of, from a marketing perspective, I look at the sponsorships that we're involved in and the teams that we support. At the end of the day, we can't sponsor everybody. We just, it's as much as we want to, as much as we want to be everything to everyone and complete domination, we simply can't. And this is something that it's not a decision that's ultimately going to be in my hands, to be honest. And it would be, it's always sad when smaller teams do fall away, but I have to make very strategic decisions when it comes to where we're putting the focus, energy, and budgets. If we see as a company that, hey, there's perhaps a team which is aligned with our values and there's opportunity and long-term strategy, then for sure we'll go there. I mean, one of the things that you can also remember is with Alpecin, we were there from the very beginning, and we were there with DSM from the very beginning. So from our side, we are there from the beginning. It's just sometimes some teams just don't align with our strategy. And that's just a business decision at the end of the day. But I do believe that there are sponsors out there who, for that, sort of lower tier team, would be a strategic business decision to make. I look at the plethora of opportunities that you can have with a team take, for example, one of the brands I saw that did it really well was Bicycle at, I can't remember which race it was last year, but basically they got the team to wear bicycle hats. And I was like, that is so smart. Like, as an entry, I mean, they're still relatively new company, and they're trying to get their brand out there. Look, I have no idea what they paid, but I certainly think that having strategic sponsorships like that, where you drive your brand to people who, you know, traditionally wouldn't have eyeballs on your brand, is the smart way to go. And if you're a strategic, quick thinking marketeer, you would invest in those teams, you know, and then it could be something that ultimately grows. And I know that we've made similar types of investments over the past, like I said, with DSM, with Alpecin, with Phoenix as an example, that it's grown to these now blue-blooded partnerships that we have with these World Tour teams. For us, I think one of the biggest focuses that we have is creating long-standing professional sponsorships and relationships. For us, we're not in the business of you know, team turnover, and we want to work with loyal partners for as long as we possibly can, because it is. We're not a super agile speedboat. We're this big ship, and we look at things in long-term decision making. So between, you know, the 5 to 10 year partnerships is something that, you know, that's goal for us. That's key for us, because we go from product cycle to product cycle, and it makes absolutely good business sense. So we're not going to invest in something which we may not be confident that, we don't know how it's going to go. Is this team going to still be around? So it's all those types of factors that we need to take into consideration. And it's business at the end of the day. But it's not easy. It isn't easy. And I do, in one breath, I said earlier, I was like, we need to create more depth, and for sure, but we do need brands, and there is a place for brands to step in and be involved with those teams as well. But it is gut wrenching and heartbreaking when they don't stick around for longer than 2 years, as an example, or get a license renewal. It breaks my heart, because there's so many riders that are then out of contract or looking for jobs, and it's at the worst time as well. Sometimes it's like, it's so late, and I sit there and I go like, how are these riders like going to go and find like teams, you know? So that is brutal. That's the brutal side of cycling. And it needs to professionalize a little bit more, in the sense of, you know, we have these dates for a very particular reason that are set out. And it's only fair that during transfer, and, you know, it's well in advance, that the riders can have the opportunity to go look for other teams, or make life decisions in whether they want to stay as a professional athlete in racing, or pursue other, you know, careers within cycling. It's not an easy one.
Yeah, I think I see two things here, and Gracie, Abby, and myself have discussed this on a podcast a few times, and more recently, that the Women's World Tour calendar needs to be reduced. There are amazing races on there, but if we could sell that those races are fine at the pro level, so we can get more teams that aren't World Tour teams there, it puts less stress as well on the World Tour teams to show up to every World Tour race. Budget, yeah. Then these teams, if they're still televised, then of course when you're approaching sponsors as a lower tier team, you can say, well, we've got these invitations to these races and we've got viewership numbers, so we know you're going to have eyes, for example, at this race to X amount of viewers. The second part to that, I think, and you're in marketing, would be that maybe these teams also really need to look at the teams as being businesses, and that they need to look at different ways to market themselves and market their riders and give incentive to brands. And I mean, social media is huge and will always be huge. So using the different platforms there to sell what they have, rather than relying just purely on race wins or top 10s or something like that. And I don't know how many teams approach sponsorship that way, but I feel that's like each team has to be a business, And this is not just the top tier, but the lower tiers. If they're looking to survive, that's kind of how it has to be. And maybe that's part of the piece of the puzzle to reach that 30% too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there are teams that, they're like marketing machines. They are so dialed in terms of the content that they create, the level of professionalism that our sports marketing and events team get to work with them on. It's incredible. At the end of the day, basically, you can be a marketing dream in the sense of you can be churning out content at a rate second to none. But if that sponsor is not able to run with you at the same pace, I feel that it's not a good match. I think what you need to do is, and that's the part of any strategic partnership that you go into, whether it's with an ambassador or with a World Tour team, is to basically say, okay, we have our focus for our strategy next year, and we would like 2 moments with you where for us as a business, these are fundamentally important to us and our messaging and what we want to achieve within the year 2025. Otherwise, it's like, why are you doing this? We're not a charity at the end of the day. Your business is not a charity. Everything you do needs to be driven on how can we, obviously at bottom line, increase sales or increase market share or get our brand out there. And if you're not aligning your sponsorship strategy to your business goals and strategy, then you're absolutely wasting your time. So one of the things I've seen that some teams do relatively well is obviously throw all the assets out on the table. Right, this is what we have. This is, we've got all these riders, we've got these key moments, we've got these training camps that we're going to be at. Let's work together in a sponsor workshop. Let's sit down and look at what we can do. And there's 1 or 2 sponsor workshops that I've been on that have been really, really good in that sense. It's actually gotten to a point where we were scratching our heads at like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with this team next year? Like, what are the key moments? What are the focus riders? We need to map out our timelines and milestones for next year as well. And we kind of went in blind, and we sat down with a bunch of the team's other sponsors as well. And we walked out of there like, okay, so next year we're doing 2 events with this other sponsor, and the sponsors actually start working together. And that's where we spoke about collaboration earlier. What I think is going to be so important as a tool for marketeers, especially looking at budgets, where you can't be everywhere always. Nobody has unlimited resources. So why don't brands work together? Especially brands that are involved with teams. I think that, one, it's another way to get additional eyeballs on your brand through using the other sponsors. You're speaking to new people. And if I can give a little bit of advice for people who are looking at getting into sponsorships or into supporting events or to looking, having an ambassador program from a marketing perspective, is go for gold when it comes to collabs. Like, plan together, do activities together, get the rider in one place at one time, get the content that you need, collab on social media, and you're going to get more reach. You're going to tick more boxes with less budget. So the trick is to work a lot smarter when it comes to the resources that you have.
Well, Alexa, this has been almost an hour now, and it's been just amazing to talk with you. We could talk for hours and hours, but we have this little segment that we finish with, and you will be new to you, but we discuss what we're obsessed with at the moment. So is there something that you're currently obsessed with other than your dog?
My goodness, I'm obsessed with The Resident on Netflix. Okay, so it's a Netflix thing. I got onto it a couple of weeks ago, and it's a hospital series, and it's basically it's like ER, but like way better, and the doctors are so cool, but you see everything, like when they're cutting people open, like it's all blood and guts, and yeah, no, I've got a thick skin and a strong stomach for that. So yeah, I've become obsessed with The Resident. So, but other than that, I would say the other things that I'm totally obsessed with this week are, it's, as you heard in the podcast, it's the Bonnie movie. It's definitely the Bonnie movie. I'm like a big girl fan of hers. I have never met her, and I've actually got a colleague who is riding with her today or yesterday. They're all in Taiwan. So I said to him, I was like, this is wrong. I should be riding with Bonnie, not you. You're a dude. Like, I want to ride with Bonnie. So hopefully I get my ride with Bonnie one day.
I think we need to get Bonnie to one of these Uplift Future mentoring.
Absolutely.
And I will be there myself. I am obsessed with my new Patagonia workwear that I just got today at this meeting.
Talk through this outfit though.
Yes. We're I mean, if only this was on YouTube, but we are matchy today. So yeah, very obsessed with my new Patagonia kits.
I'm a big fan.
Can't afford it myself to have all the stuff, so I was very excited. Been waiting months for this. My boss finally brought it to this meeting, and just obsessed with you two. So thank you so much for joining. We've just loved having you, and look forward to all the good things that you and other women in the industry are going to bring.
Thank you. And I think it's also massive props to you and Abby in what you're doing to promote and push and support women's cycling. I think it's Immediate plays such a massive part and role in where women's cycling is to date. And it's only going from strength to strength. So having me on the show is an absolute honor. I think that there are plenty of women that will be coming over, and I think we should have some good chats with them. But back to this Patagonia outfit, I'm a big fan. I'm big fan. It's a great brand as well. But hopefully, hopefully we see you at Paris-Roubaix avec Zwift soon. And it's thanks again.
We're nearing the end of December, which means the end of 2024. We've got 2 more episodes planned for you all this year, one of which is a final conversation between Lauren, Gracie, and I. So if you have any questions you want us to answer before 2024 wraps, you can message us on social media or Discord, or comment on the Wheel Talk newsletter, which comes out the same day as this podcast, if you weren't aware. There's a whole newsletter that goes along with this podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next week.